It's late when we arrive at Genghis Khan International Airport in Ulaan Baatar after a long flight from Seattle and a stop in Seoul. We check into the Ulaan Baatar hotel and fall into bed. We wake up in Mongolia, a large country, 605,000 square miles, more than twice the size of Texas, sandwiched between Russia and China. Ulaan Baatar, the capital of Mongolia, has a population of 1.5 million, or about half the population of the entire country. After breakfast, we're headed for Hustai National Park. After experiencing UB's morning traffic, we are out in the beautiful countryside. It's a relatively short drive to Hustai National Park. We check into the gear camp at the park entrance. Our gear seems to have everything we need for a one-night stop, except a bathroom. After lunch, we set out to explore the park. The first snow of the season has fallen. There are marmots everywhere. They don't seem bothered by the light dusting of snow. We're here to see Prezwalski's horse, a rare and endangered wild horse. The horse was first described by Nikolai Prezwalski in 1881. Another expedition in 1900 captured horses for European zoos. The last wild herd was sighted in 1967 and the last individual in 1969. They were declared extinct in the wild. By the end of the 1950s, the captive population had shrunk to 12 horses in the world. In 1977, a foundation was established to encourage captive breeding. 16 horses were released into the wild, including here in Hustai in 1992. Then 6 years later, Hustai was made a national park to provide a sanctuary for the horses. The reintroduction has been very successful, and in 2005, the status was changed from extinct in the wild to endangered. Now there is a free-ranging population of over 300 in the wild. For those of us who love seeing animals in the wild, this has to be one of the highlights of this trip. But there's more than horses in this place. We stop to admire the fantastic vistas and the fall wildflowers. We descend into a valley that opens onto a plain. Gerald explains that this pile of rocks is a burial site, one of hundreds in this park. Not far is a deer stone. The name comes from the stylized deer. Best guess that these stones date to 1000 BCE. Also on the plain is the Ongud Monument Ensemble. It was constructed by Turkic tribes during the 6th through the 8th centuries for their noblemen. There are about 30 man-like figures. There's also a lion and a sheep. But most intriguing is about 550 standing stones in an alignment. We head back to our gear camp for dinner and to rest up and shake off our jet lag. This morning we're headed to another important historical site, Karakorum. On the way we have to stop to watch a herder watering his horses from his motorcycle. All along the road, we see herds of sheep and goats. Some vultures and a raven are cleaning up some roadkill. 2/3 of the way to Karakorum is Bagwan-U, a complex of stupas on a hilltop. Almost to Karakorum, we stop for a flock of demoiselle cranes. They're gathering to start their migration to their wintering grounds in India. They will fly over the Himalayan mountains at altitudes between 16 and 26,000 feet. Pretty amazing for this smallest crane. They're only 30 inches tall and weigh 4 to 6 pounds. We've arrived at our home for one night. The name translates to Eternal Heaven. This is a big camp, which means it can be a long way to the bathroom. Key safety tip: when choosing a bed, select the ones closest to the stove. Today, Karakorum is a sleepy town of 15,000 people. But in 1235 to 1260, it was the capital of the Mongol Empire. We're headed to the Karakorum Museum to learn all about the glory days. There's not much to see of the old city because stones from the abandoned Mongol capital were used in the construction of the Erdene Zuu Monastery, which was started in 1585. The monastery was damaged in 1688 and the monastery was abandoned. It was rebuilt in the 18th century and by 1872 had 62 temples and up to 1,000 monks. In 1939, the communist rulers destroyed the monastery and killed hundreds of monks. 3 small temples and the external wall with the stupas survived. In 1944, Stalin pressured Mongolian communist leaders to maintain the monastery as a showplace for foreign visitors. After the fall of communism in 1990, the monastery was returned to the lamas and became an active monastery as well as a museum. The 3 small temples that survived the 1939 purge are richly decorated. Inside and out, the monastery buildings offer a feast for the photographer. This friendly lady was a willing model for our photos. Outside the main gate were more models, trying to drum up business for their costume rental. This 13th century stone turtle is one of the few artifacts remaining in place from Karakorum's days as the center of the Mongol Empire. For the wildlife photographer, you have to look hard for subjects. But for the landscape photographer, the possibilities are endless. And then it's back to Eternal Heaven Gear Camp for dinner.